Over the years, persons with disabilities were considered inferior and were not easily accepted into the society. In the medieval era, disability was considered a punishment from God for one's sins or misbehavior or that of one's ancestors. Others saw it as the work of the devil. However, many changes have taken place in status and treatment of persons with disabilities. That notwithstanding, the remnants of tradition and past beliefs still influences present-day practices affecting such group. In the area of education, most children with disabilities were not given the opportunity to go to school and somehow they were left behind. An estimated 93 million children worldwide live with disabilities. The Sustainable Inclusive Education Project SIEP is an initiative of the CBC Health Services and the CBC Education Department with an overall objective to achieve an inclusive education system which can respond to the diverse needs of all pupils and students within the framework of universal design for learning. Even though the CBC Education Department had been offering inclusive education, they took it to another level with the coming of the Sustainable Inclusive Education Project, sponsored by the Lillian Foundation.
This idea was conceived in August 2017. And also I took a look at the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and I realized that in goal number 4, there was that emphasis on the need for inclusive education. We had two objectives. The first one was to institutionalize inclusion in the Baptist education system. We were doing some skeletal inclusive education in DO and in BCHS in Kitchen, but this has not been institutionalized, so there was the need for the entire CBC Education Department to be involved in sustainable inclusive education. The second objective was to increase access to affordable, quality, inclusive education for children with disabilities.
In Cameroon, the CBC Health Services is the strategic partner organization of the Liliana Foundation. So the Sustainable Inclusive Education Project, it is a joint project by the CBC Health Services and the Education Department of the Cameroon Baptist Convention. And in this project, we are actually piloting inclusion in the CBC schools, that is making CBC schools inclusive. And when I say inclusive, it means that we are piloting a system whereby children with disabilities can be able to study in the same classroom with their counterpart or their peers without a disability.
Now that children with disabilities study in the same classroom with their peers without disabilities, it is a dream come true for many. Just within 2 years of its existence, the project has put smiles on the faces of parents with children with disabilities. They could not withhold their joy. Moreover, the project is bilingual and can meet the needs of children with disabilities from the French background.
Now we Patrick to go school, I feel happy. And you too, you be the like and for go school, but no wait for me for carry you to go school. But now I feel happy for Sika Patrick to go school. But that last time when you nobody go school, I nobody feel happy because Patrick be the like school, but I not get me a place for go take Patrick go.
I receive Nase Abubakar say it don't overchange. I will be first day for us. Be the glad we small them. It be the she don't vest. Now so we don't go school. See some people them way then some picking them way then they like a it is glad now. Day for school. If you know put you close for go school, go she don't find for us. You go Susuji talk say I want go school. I'm very, very happy because
For years, my son has been going to another school. Since I brought him in to CBC school, the way they take care of him, and they talk about the eyes, you know, to show that somebody is taking care of your son, and you see the kind of pain you are going towards your son, that shows the love. So I'm very, very happy with the school teachers and others. So it's very, very interesting. I'm happy.
Non, je suis vraiment satisfaite de cette école, de tous les enseignants là-bas. Je suis très contente parce que j'ai vu l'amélioration de l'enfant quand il est parti là-bas l'année passée. Je suis vraiment fière de cette école.
Nous sommes très satisfaits dans un premier temps parce qu'on voit qu'il change. Bon, il a l'envie d'écrire. Il fait un effort parce que quand j'arrive, il m'oblige que je dois lui montrer ce que la maîtresse donne à l'école de faire.
The introduction of inclusive education is not an interesting one for just the pupils and students. The teachers themselves are so excited about it. They study the sign language in order to freely communicate with the children with disabilities in their classrooms. Interesting there.
One other interesting thing that I've found with this program is working with teachers to prepare their lessons, to correct their lessons, so that while in class, they'll be able to include all the learners. Unlike in the past where we had one focus, visual and audio learners, but now we have learners with visual impairment, learners with hearing loss. So sometimes when the teachers draw their lessons and we correct them and we don't see those aspects where those children will be catered for, we try to draw their attention to it. So the teachers consciously now in preparing their lessons work hard to make sure that they include activities where those learners with those disabilities can be included in their lessons.
It is appealing how parents at this instant work closely with the teachers of their children as a result of inclusion. It involves everyone on board, and it means everyone in school. None should be left behind in the learning process. Madam Mary Ann Binforn is the inclusive education specialist at the Resource Center. She is doing a lot to improve on the pupils academically, with or without a disability.
Usually I begin with identification, identifying the different disabilities, and then we go on to assessment. We assess these kids in all areas of their disabilities. We assess them, and this assessment is carried on by talking with the parents to get background information about the children, about their disabilities. We talk with the teachers. Then we have also learning readiness assessment that we do, especially for the kids in the lower primary. We do that to get their present level of performance, because that way, if we don't get where they are starting from, we will not be able to access progress. So that way we do a learning readiness assessment, which they take. And then from there, we're able to see the areas where they're falling behind. From there, we program interventions to meet these needs. For where they're falling behind, we have interventions that we have to implement in classroom, in the resource room, at home, to meet the needs of these children. Then from there, when we implement the assessment, we have to monitor. But before we do that, I think we are in the process where we're doing IEPs, individual education plan for these kids. Because like I tell you, we can have two children with cognitive impairments, but they present different characteristics. So each individual has a specific need depending on the characteristics that the children that they're presenting.
Some children with disabilities before now had not been introduced to the sign language, says Mr. Chan Nathaniel, sign language interpreter at the Resource Center. Such children are very much welcome to come to CBC schools.
Basically, I work with children who have hearing problems, maybe those who have hearing loss, or those who are completely deaf. So far in the center here, we have a number of about 9 children with hearing loss. There are some of them here that have not yet acquired the language. So I do all I can in terms of trainings, in terms of introducing them to the sign language, and they're able to grasp the sign language. And as well, we do classroom support activities. I go and interpret when the teacher is teaching, and sometimes we work with the teachers to see that they put up better strategies to better accommodate these children with hearing impairments, such like maybe teaching lessons much more in demonstrative manner. So what we are doing to meet up with that is that we don't only work with the children. Particularly, we are an inclusive center, and inclusion involves everybody coming on board. During morning devotions, we always have sessions in which we introduce the entire school community to the sign language. Even sometimes we move through their classes, we teach them some basics in sign language, because the children will not feel comfortable among their peers if they cannot fully interact with their peers.
Transition is not always easy. It is a gradual process. So it was when the Sustainable Inclusive Education Project started. At this point, there is so much to write home about.
We have been able to construct and equip a resource center and a resource room based here in Bamenda, which is supposed to meet the needs of children with disabilities, pupils and students with disabilities in all the pilot schools that we have. We have been able to purchase a good chunk of assistive devices. For now, these devices are lodged here in Bamenda in the pilot center, specifically in the resource room. And with time, we'll make sure that we distribute these assistive devices to the various institutions under the pilot phase as the need arises. We have trained teachers. You know, you cannot start a project like that without training teachers. We have trained all the teachers in the initial pilot schools, and then even in those schools in the West region that we added as pilot schools, there have been a good number of workshops, there have been a good number of seminars. There is a component that has to do with the teacher training college. It was very necessary for us to train the teacher trainers in the teacher training colleges, and specifically we are talking about BTTs in DOP, so that they could in turn train teachers who come in on issues of inclusive education. We now have close to 200 students and pupils with disabilities in our pilot schools benefiting from these projects.
Parents have a vital part to play in the education of their children. With the creation of the resource room, teachers now identify children without disabilities who have learning needs and send them to the resource room. This is always an opportunity for the parents to work closely with the teachers to ensure that their children can improve on the academics.
The teacher sends him to come to the resource room so we can find out why he's not performing well in class. He's failing in all areas of the lessons and does not seem to be making any progress since first time. So the teacher really is interested in finding out what is really wrong with him, because he wants Hanson to be part of the instruction and make progress and pass his exams.
The way you copy notes, you cannot use this kind of things and understand. You see that? This should be one of the things that is making you not to pass, because you can't read this and understand. You have textbooks. You don't have no textbook.
I have talked with Hanson, I have looked at his books, and Hanson does not seem to, he doesn't copy notes well, he doesn't copy all his notes. Hanson does not have textbooks, Hanson does not have all his exercise books, and Hanson's parents do not show, and they don't help him at home. Like he sees, when he gets back home, nobody checks his books, nobody asks him what he's done in school. And so all of that, they play so much on the child's education.
It is indeed thrilling how just within 2 years of its existence, pupils and students so love inclusion that they too are so supportive of their peers with disabilities.
We always talk on papers. When I write, I give him, he writes also. When I copy, when he's not seen, show him what I've written. Then when they give assignment, I also show him the assignments.
At first we used to communicate using papers, but now we communicate using sign language because I've learned how to sign somewhat. The only difficulties I feel is that I start to wait for him to copy and reach up to the level that I am before I continue copying. That's the only difficulty. Sitting with colleagues has changed the way I look at people with disability, because when I'm helping him, I'm not only helping him to understand, I'm also helping myself.
Just like in the secondary school, the primary is no different. Often you will find pupils drawing the wheelchairs of children with disabilities around the school compound, especially during breaks, with so much joy, love and satisfaction. Mr. For Francis is the project coordinator of the Resource Center. Remodeling of structures, he says, was inevitable at the beginning.
Before the start of the program, there were a lot of things that were put in place. The first thing is the infrastructure. This structure itself is an innovation that has come to showcase the presence of things that have changed in this environment for the past 2 years. A lot has changed in terms of physical infrastructure and in terms of pedagogy. And I also want to stress here that this is the pilot center, and the project is expanding to other schools. It's unfortunate that because of the prevailing situation, this region has not benefited a lot, but we are extending, the project has extended to the west to some of our primary schools. Even some of the toilet facilities within this school, we discovered they are not normal as the other toilets. They are spacious to take into consideration children that can move on a wheelchair. They have access to the toilet, and they can move and circulate around very freely.
According to Mr. Buminang Eugene, principal of BCHS in Kwen, there have been focused on making life comfortable within the school environment for children with disabilities.
It has not really been easy with us, but we think that with the introduction of inclusive education at BCHS Kwen, that's actually set us in motion, and we are moving with the challenges that are coming up. First thing is we had the issue of introducing ramps to enable children with mobility issues to be able to move into the classes. We had also the issue of trying to cope with the children who are visually impaired or who are hearing impaired, so that they could be able to quickly associate. So we had to introduce the issue of signing to the rest of the students, and every morning all the students gather in the assembly ground and they are taught the sign language. They interact with those students, and now they are feeling so free in class. They cooperate. They are even the ones who teach themselves and interact in class.
The head teachers of the CBC nursery and primary schools in Bamenda and those of the West region have also taken the bull by the horn. Their lesson preparations now include pupils with disabilities.
Yeah, if you can look at the school, there are, we have ramps. Ramps have been built. The classrooms have been modified to suit those with impairment, so that they can have access to the classes. Those are some of the things that we have done as a transition to inclusive education. And we have equally trained our teachers on how to take care of children with impairment, of different types of impairment. We have had workshops in Bamenda where the teachers have been trained, and whenever we come back to the school, we make sure that every month we sit down and do some referential courses just within the staff for better handling of those children.
We started with the ramps that we have in school. Ramps were built so that children with disabilities could access the classrooms, the toilet, and even the office. And moreover, the classrooms have been structured in such a way that children with disabilities can learn freely with other children, and participate even during sports. When we marched during the 11th February, many parents discovered that something has changed in CBC Kutaba, because children with disabilities could march, and this so that the school offers inclusive education.
Parents of children with disabilities also testify that so many changes have taken place in the lives of their children.
Only if you put your hands on, now you go jikam. Now your hands so, now you go jikam. You time we want to you go see na hands so, where they make them so. Where you no fit jik up so, na so. They say, treat me na Patrick go make them so. Where your hand be na for now. You take your hand up now so. No me na head the jikam also. That was fine though. Even for school now, you talk for your mother.
Feel happy because he really try. Like in mathematics, sometimes he come here and you we try for do assignments. Now the other subjects where it be difficult because person not there for really explain and for your own way. It just make me happy. Say they go school.
Now we don't start for go school CBC. I the overglad. Allah, I the overglad for you. And I the pray God for say this school where they call them say CBC. Say oh man where they came you then how you travel put you are picking for them because where then they know the negligee and the capay them then go take care for all picking. Came man then how because that my picking there so. If you know then a man where you get hurt, you know if he carry.
Vraiment content, au fond plus profond. Il y a des fois, je n'ai pas même causé avec le directeur. Je ne fais même pas un mois, 3 semaines sans passer là-bas à l'école voir le directeur. Il expliquait toujours certains petits problèmes. Et lui aussi m'a encouragé que non, ce n'est pas la fin du monde. Si Ahmed est handicapé d'oreille, c'est que ce n'est pas la fin du monde.
The number of children with disabilities that are in the community, that are in the quarters, there are more than those that are in school. Some parents feel discouraged sending their children there because they think that the kids cannot produce anything. But I want to encourage them that they should send their children to CBC because they will really take care of them there. Then they come and meet the other ones that are there and they will take care. They will not regret that they send those kids to CBC.
For everyone to be given a chance to study with equal opportunities, it takes you and me. It involves every stakeholder in this business of education, beginning with the parents.
The success of this project lies very much in maximum cooperation and collaboration. The parents must first of all have an interest in the education of the children. And apart from having the interest, we know that providing education for children with disabilities is expensive because the parents have to go an extra mile. We also know that the teachers have to sacrifice. Initially, it was not easy for them to accept this additional role because they had been used to teaching children in classes which we refer to as being children who are normal. And therefore, to add to them children with disabilities, it was a thing that was difficult for them to understand. But now, they have understood it very, very well. And therefore, I expect that they should continue to cooperate in that domain.
It may interest you to know that in Cameroon today, we have over 90% of children with disabilities who have never seen the four walls of a classroom. Now, when we are making schools inclusive, schools that are nearer even to the homes of all children, when we make them inclusive, you see that we provide more opportunities for children with disabilities to go to school. At first, children with disabilities could only go to school in special centers, special facilities, and which were very far off and very expensive. But when we make our schools inclusive, our community schools inclusive, it gives more opportunities for children to study with their counterparts without a disability. This project is just in its pilot phase, and we have just touched 5 schools in the education department of the CBC. We still have many other schools that have not started inclusive education, And so for the future perspective of this project, we want to see that it is scaled out in all CBC schools. And so as we have started with the pilot and with the lessons that we have learned from the pilot, we are seeing them very encouraging, and certainly we are going to scale it out so that all CBC schools can accept and admit and teach children with and without disabilities in the same environment and in the same classrooms.
We have had some challenges, but we have been able to overcome them. And with time we'll overcome some of the challenges. But the socio-political crisis led to the closure of schools in the rural areas, so there has been an influx of pupils and students into our schools in the urban areas, and specifically in Kwen, and then an influx in the schools in West region, which is enabled to Northwest region. We have a situation now where the teacher ratio is like 1 to 90 or 1 to 100. Therefore, in every classroom, you have an average of 80, 90, 100 pupils, even in the secondary schools. And it makes it very difficult for us to manage the inclusive part of education for the children with disabilities. All the same, we have constructed more classes. That is not enough, but we think with time, we are going to overcome the challenge of large classroom sizes. Secondly, some parents are not proactive in the education of their children. They have not yet understood that inclusive education is education with a difference, and that their role is very, very important. Unlike the other children, which we say, in quotes, are normal, all the parents have to do is to send them to school, pay their fees, sit back and relax for the teachers to do the rest. But for parents of children with disabilities, they have to be proactive.
After all has been said and done, the ultimate goal of this piece is for all of us to put our hands on deck and to give inclusive education a chance. The CBC Sustainable Inclusive Education Project Resource Center is there, open for the general public, open to persons with and without disabilities. You could learn sign language or Braille to be able to assist or communicate with children with disabilities, and that way you will be contributing to making the world a better place.